Close your eyes now. Let the day loosen its grip. Let the noise thin into stillness. You are not rushing anywhere. There is no hurry, her only the slow turning of time, like a wheel drawn gently across the sky. Tonight you travel through a land, not made of borders or flags, but of stories whispered across centuries. A land where time folds like fabric, where memory lingers in monsoon winds and sacred rivers, where footsteps from 1,000 years ago still echo softly beneath your own. This is India, but not the India of textbooks or timelines, not the one reduced to empires and dates. This is the India that breathes, the one that sings in the silence between temple bells, that stirs in the dust of courtyards before dawn, that waits in the smile of a grandmother telling a story for the 100th time, and in the hush that follows it. You will not need maps for this journey, only breath, only quiet, only the rhythm of listening. We will walk together through ancient cities that still dream beneath their stones, through scripts carved by hand into palm leaves, through night markets lit by memory and jasmine. There will be no noise, her only rhythm, no lessons, only wonder, no questions, only listening. Let your mind rest on this land like mist over river water. Let the weight of time become light again. You are not a visitor here. You are a part of the dreaming. Let us begin. You lie, still, listening not with ears, but with the quiet at the center of your chest. The world fades to a soft dusk, and when you open your mind's eye, you are no longer here. You are somewhere older, quieter, slower. The air carries the scent of warm soil and river mist. No monuments rise yet, no emperors stamp their mark. This land has no flag, no border, but it breathes and it waits. You are drifting through what will one day be called India, but tonight it is only land and light. The sun tilts over a wide ancient plain where the Indus River coils like a silver thread stitched through the earth. It moves not with urgency, but with memory. The water knows its way. Along its banks, a civilization begins, not with war drums, but with clay and rhythm. You wander through the early hum of life, the Indus Valley civilization. There are no speeches, no known kings, no great battles carved into stone. But still, you feel the quiet pulse of something deeply organized. Streets align with the stars. Wells are dug with precision. The homes are small, even, familiar. You pass rows of mud brick houses, each one like a heartbeat, modest and soft. Inside, children sleep. Outside, someone leaves a trace of grain in a bowl for the birds. No one shouts here. No one hurries. The city breathes gently. You move now. Through the alleys of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. There are no palaces, no towering statues, yet something sacred rests in the pattern of the streets. You pass a man shaping a seal, a tiny square of stone pressed with symbols, and a silent animal, a unicorn, a bull, a word not yet known. These glyphs do not speak to us in sound, but in symmetry. They whisper a language without translation, but not without meaning. Near a broad water tank, perhaps a public bath, you feel the stillness of ritual, not pomp. Here, cleanliness was care. Water was not just survival, but something of the spirit. You can almost hear the wet stone under bare feet, the splash of morning's first handfuls, the breath exhaled into the rising steam. Nothing is written here. In stories we can read, but it is all spoken in design, in habit, in the hush of daily life. You do not meet kings here. You meet people, the kind who rise with the sun, sift flour, shaped pots, tend goats. Their hands are dusty, their songs are soft. They leave behind no thrones, but terracotta toys. No epic poems, but perfect drains. No empire, but order, and that order was quiet. You walk through it like walking through a mind dreaming in peace. You feel no flags waving, no borders drawn, no proclamations shouted from balconies. Yet this place is not empty. It is full of choice, of care, of thought. The cities are placed where the land rises gently above the floods. The walls are low, but aligned. Granaries stand like lungs storing breath for the hungry season. Everything is simple, but simplicity is not the same as smallness. It is a still wisdom. The people do not seem afraid of the future, nor obsessed with the past. They seem rooted in now. Their gods, if they named them, not loud. Perhaps a tree, perhaps a river, perhaps the bull carved gently on so many seals. Their prayer is woven into walking, into shaping, into returning. Home at dusk and resting beneath stars that do not yet have Greek names. And then one day they fade. The city's empty, the drains stop flowing. Perhaps the river shifted, perhaps the rains paused. Perhaps it was slow, not a fall, but a quiet forgetting. No walls fell, no conquerors came, just a stillness that grew until no footsteps echoed through. The lanes, the clay toys fall silent, the seals gather dust, the bath no longer fills, but you are still here, and the silence does not feel like an ending. It feels like a breath drawn in, waiting. Later, the Vedas will be sung beside new rivers. Later, empires will rise, names will be written, borders will be drawn. But this was before all of that. This was when life moved like water, not to conquer, but to belong. You feel it now in your own breath, the shape of sleep entering. You like the pattern of those vanished lanes. No sound of war, no banners, only the rhythm of life, perfectly arranged, forgotten by history's louder voices, but remembered by the earth. And as you close your eyes, the ancient land breathes. Again through you, not as India, not as nation, but as stillness without borders. You awaken in the quiet glow before dawn. The air is cool against your skin, and somewhere near you hear it's the sound of water. Slow and steady, not roaring, not rushing, but moving with timeless patience. You walk toward it barefoot, across dew-damp earth, through fields that smell of grain and morning. And there, curving in silver through the land like a soft brushstroke, is the Ganga. She is not just a river. She is breath. She is memory. She is myth carried on current. You sit at her edge, where the water touches stone, and you realize you are not the first. For thousands of years, people have come to this same place, not to conquer, but to bathe, to pray, to weep, to begin again. In her waters, ashes are scattered, and so are seeds. What dies here returns. What is born here remembers. The sun lifts slowly, and the Ganga glows pale gold. You watch a woman in a red sorry cup water in her palms and lift it to the sky. She says no words. She does not need to. The gesture is older than speech, a soft petition to time itself. Behind her, smoke curls from temple roofs, and bells ring out like distant heartbeats. You drift alongside the river now. She takes you gently through the pages of history. Empires have gathered at her banks, Maguda, Kosala, the Mauryas, the Guptas, but they are echoes beside her silence. Even their palaces and fortresses crumble more quickly than the rivers. Own meandering will. You glide past them like dreams. The Ganga does not rush. She teaches slowness. In Varanasi, the ghats rise like stone petals, layered and worn. You see men sitting in meditation, children playing with floating lamps, widows in white, priests in saffron. The living and the dead meet here without fear. You learn that this river does not divide. It carries opposites in harmony, grief and joy, birth and burning, noise and stillness. And somehow she softens them all. You remember now how they say the Ganga fell from heaven, too powerful for the earth to hold. And so Lord Shiva caught her in his hair, let her down gently, and that is how the sacred flows, not with force, but with patience. Her waters cleanse not by washing away the world, but by reminding it how to be still again. As you drift farther downstream, the landscape opens wide. Rice paddies shimmer like mirrors. Banyan trees spread their arms over quiet shrines. You pass towns and villages, some ancient, some newborn, all of them shaped by her flow. You begin to feel the pattern. Life here is not built with straight lines, but with curves. The river curves, the paths curve, even time seems to bend gently instead of march. The Ganga writes not in ink, but in rhythm. You pause now at a river bend, where a poet once sat, perhaps Kalidasa, perhaps someone unnamed, and composed a verse that still hangs in the air, not for an audience, not for fame, just for the joy of words stirred by water. This land did not separate poetry from life. A grain of rice, a lover's glance, a boat returning, these were all part of the same sacred story. And that story is not just of kings or gods. It's of hands planting seeds after monsoon, of songs sung during harvest, of lamps lit for ancestors who no longer walk but still listen. The Ganga does not forget. She holds every name ever whispered at her edge. And she remembers not as a book does, but as a breath does, by continuing without break. The river narrows again. You walk beside her now, barefoot in the evening dust. The day has burned away, but the heat is soft now, like a shawl draped gently over your shoulders. Fireflies blink in the trees, and the smell of ghee and earth fills the dusk. At a nearby ghat, someone sings. You don't understand the words, but you understand the lullaby. It is meant to be heard not with the mind, but with the quiet between thoughts. You sit down, finally still, and dip your fingers into the river. The water wraps them with no urgency, no resistance. You could fall asleep here, and she would carry you without fear, because she does not pull. She invites, and as your eyes close, you realize something deep in your bones. The Ganga is not just a river in India. She is India's oldest sentence, written without pen, read without eyes. You do not need to trace her entire path to know her. You only need to let her carry you a little while, like time, like dream, like sleep itself. The land is still beneath your feet, but something stirs in the air, a memory not your own, yet familiar in its sorrow. You walk through morning mist, across plains that once trembled with the sound of elephants and boots, banners and battle drums. The trees here once watched warriors pass. The earth once drank too much blood, but now there is only silence. And that silence carries a name, Ashoka. You find yourself standing near the edge of Kalinga, where a river runs quietly past broken stones and dry grass. There is no sign of glory here, no carved triumph, only wind and ash, and a feeling that once something irreversible happened. You listen, and if you are still enough, you can hear it, not the battle itself, but the moment after, the pause, the breath drawn in pain. The transformation, Ashoka, Maria, was once a prince of steel and fire, trained to rule by force, raised to make the world submit. His empire stretched across the bones of many kingdoms, from the mountains of Kashmir to the edges of Bengal, from the deserts of the west to the southern plateaus. He was a conqueror, crowned not just in gold but in fear. Yet it is not his conquest that you remember, it is what came after. You drift beside him now, in his heavy silence after the Battle of Kalinga. The field is littered not with enemies, but with fathers, sons, farmers, potters, dreams. The dead do not scream. They lie quiet, as if asking a question the sword cannot answer. Ashoka, once the great unifier, kneels in the dirt. He does not celebrate. He does not sing. He sees what has been taken, and something inside him begins to soften, not collapse, but turn. Like a tree bending slowly toward light after a long season of drought. This was not a fall. It was a surrender, not to defeat, but to mercy. And from that mercy, an emperor was remade. You follow him now through the slow reshaping of a soul. He does not give up his throne. He changes the meaning of it. He lays down the weapon and picks up the word. All across the land, from the cliffs of Gujarat to the hills of Andhra stone, pillars rise not to boast but to remind. Carved in soft curves, written in the language of the people, his edicts speak gently. Practice compassion. Do no harm. Let all beings live as they are. Each pillar is like a breath held in stone, a whisper from a king who once screamed. You touch one with your hand, and the surface is warm from the sun. The words have faded with time, but the feeling remains. Governance as care, rule as kindness, power not as weight, but as offering. You journey with him as he embraces the path of the Buddha, not with noise, not with gold statues and temples, but with quiet actions. Hospitals bloom, roads are smoothed, shade trees are planted for travelers. Wells are dug not just for people, but for animals too. He becomes the kind of king who looks up at the sky not for omens, but for balance. In your dreamlike walk, you pass through places touched by this transformation. A village where a tax collector now bows to a farmer. A school where a child learns not just numbers, but ethics. A monastery where silence is filled with peace, not fear. Ashoka does not erase suffering, but he no longer multiplies it. He becomes not just a ruler, but a listener. And yet he was still human. He still ruled, still made mistakes, still carried the burden of his past. But the difference now is this: he did not run from it. He allowed it to shape his path, not chain it. His regret did not shrink him. It expanded him into something humbler, wiser, deeper, into someone who no longer needed to conquer to feel complete. You wander into the heart of Pataliputra, his capital, where the air smells of sandalwood and soft fire. The great palaces are quieter than you'd expect. No parades, no ego, just order, just rhythm, just time folding gently into practice. You see scribes bending over scripts, monks offering rice to strangers, and, above them all, a calm that does not need explanation. You understand now, Ashoka's greatness was not in what he built, but in what he stopped breaking. His legacy is not a line of heirs or riches. It is a shift, a turning, a new shape for power. As the day dims into dusk, you walk once more among the stone pillars. Some are cracked, some buried, some nearly erased by rain and wind. But the message remains, not in the precision of the script, but in its presence. It tells you something simple, that even the strongest hands can become gentle, that even the loudest lives can end in quiet grace, And that maybe, just maybe, the greatest changes do not happen in war or victory, but in the pause after. You sit down in the tall grass, near where the battle once raged, and feel no fear. The night is soft, a bird calls somewhere in the trees, and from across centuries, Ashoka's echo reaches you not as command, but as comfort. You close your eyes, and the world forgives itself just a little more. You begin beneath a quiet sky. The clouds have thinned, the wind has calmed, and all around you the earth feels strangely expectant, like something sleeping beneath it is ready to be remembered. You walk slowly through grass that brushes your ankles, through a path that curves where no roads are marked. The land doesn't speak aloud, it hums softly, like breath through stone. You don't yet see the temple, but you feel its nearness, like a whisper waiting on the edge of time. Then, as the trees part, it appears not like a building, not like a monument, but like a memory, carved into a hill, rising from the rock itself. The temple greets you not with grandeur, but with gravity. It does not need to declare its beauty. It has waited through centuries, through silence and storm, and it knows that those who arrive will listen. You are in Ellora, but you could be anywhere in India, for these temples live scattered across the land like fossils of devotion, half buried, vine-covered, soot-kissed, some carved into mountains, some sunken in forests, some revealed only when the earth slips or water recedes. They were not made to be found in a hurry. They wait for the slow walker, the patient pilgrim, the one who lingers. You walk into the rock-hewn cave, and the world shifts. Light grows dim, the air cools, your breath sounds louder. Here, stone does not simply support walls, it has been transformed. Chisels have made it dance. Ceilings curve like the inside of a shell, ribs of stone rising into a dome above. Columns twist into lotus petals, into dancers frozen mid-movement, into gods with half-smiles and infinite eyes. They are not standing still. They are waiting, watching, breathing, stretching toward light that once came through a long-vanished door. No king signs these stones. No army camped here, yet they are filled with the most intimate kind of labor. Hands carved these spaces from darkness, one flake of rock at a time. Imagine the years it took, the silence, the discipline, the joy. These were not walls for war. These were sculptures for sleep, for prayer, for dissolving the boundary between the human and the divine. You move from cave to cave, through Buddhist chatirs, where columns echo the shape of ancient wooden halls long vanished, to Jain shrines, where every god seems etched in lace, to Hindu sanctums, where Shiva dances not in violence, but in rhythm. Time feels layered here. You are not in one century, but many. Each wall, each carving, each panel has its own decade, its own devotion. But they do not compete. They coexist peacefully, intricately, quietly. You light a small oil lamp and place it beside a stone foot. The flame dances in the shadows, and for a moment you understand what these temples were for. Not for the world to admire, not for tourists to photograph, but for closeness, for the heart to slow, for the mind to loosen its grip, for the body to remember its place within something much vaster and much softer than itself. You travel now to Khajuraho, where stone turns sensual. Here, temples rise like sighs from the earth, and their walls ripple with the curves of bodies of others. Dancers, gods, musicians, animals, all locked in embrace. Nothing is hidden here. Nothing is ashamed. You run your fingers over stone lips, stone thighs, stone arms wrapped around hips in ancient ecstasy. But it does not arouse, it soothes. It reminds you that the divine was never separate from desire, that beauty was once a kind of prayer. Khajuraho is not crude, it is not shocking, it is soft, sacred, a reminder that to be fully alive was once considered a form of worship. Every gesture carved into these walls was a praise song, every embrace a metaphor. Nothing in these temples is still, not even after 1,000 years. The stone dances, the stone breathes, and yet the world outside forgot them. For centuries, vines swallowed their spires, dust drifted into their colonizers passed by, blind to their elegance. But the temples did not weep, they simply waited. They knew the land would remember, and it did. You drift next to Hampi, where ruined temples stretch across the bouldered plains like a dream half sketched. The wind here is stronger, full of stories. You hear it in the broken mandapas, in the empty sanctums, in the river that winds past. The stones, this was once a city of poets and traders, elephants and priests. Now it is mostly sky, but the stones remain. The carvings still line the pillars. You pass a shrine where a god still wears red pigment on his foreheads someone has not. Forgotten. You learn here that temples are not static. They are like people. They rise, they fall, they breathe in prayer, they collapse in sorrow, but they never truly vanish. Even when buried, even when cracked, they hold something more durable than structure, intention, and you realize something else too. These temples were not made for gods who needed them. They were made by people who needed to remember. Remember the vastness of time. Remember the softness of love. Remember the endless motion of the world. The temple was not a place to ask for things. It was a place to be silent, to be still, to be near. You pause in one now, in a village whose name you do not know. The priest is gone. The paint has faded, but the sanctum is cool and quiet. And in the center, a stone lingam stands still, wet with water, still crowned with flowers. Someone was just here. Someone still believes. Or perhaps someone simply still loves. You sit cross-legged beside the stone. There is no need to speak. The temple does not require it. You hear the hum of bees, the murmur of leaves, and in your chest, the slow settling of breath. You are not praying. You are simply existing, and that is enough. The temple accepts it. The earth beneath this carved ceiling holds you the way it holds its own roots. As night falls, you step outside. The stars have emerged, and above the crumbled shikara, they glow like eyes of old gods. You feel the air shift. The ground cools. Somewhere a jackal calls, but you are not afraid. These ruins are not haunted. They are held by time, held by care, held by the long, slow patience of a people who knew that beauty was not meant to be rushed, and that sacredness was never meant to be loud. You begin to walk away, but not to leave, because the temple does not end at its walls. It follows you in. Your spine, in your silence, in the soft way your footsteps now meet the earth. You are a little more like stone now, a little more like breath, a little more like the temples that time forgot to bury. You stand in a harbor where the sea speaks many languages. The wind smells of salt and cinnamon, and ships rest on the water. Like sleeping birds, their sails are folded, their masts are tall and still. Somewhere nearby, someone is tying a knot into rope, and another hand is weighing spices with careful fingers. You're not in one empire or one kingdom, you're in many, all at once. For this is the India not of war or worship, but of quiet. Exchange. Before there were borders, there were routes. Not just lines on a map, but winding lifelines that carried not just goods, but stories, scents, and rhythms. India was not an isolated jewel locked behind stone walls. It was opener land of arrival, of invitation. From Roman merchants to Arab sailors, from Chinese monks to Persian poets, many came and many stayed. They came not with conquest in mind, but with curiosity or with cargo. And what they took back was more than wares. They carried the softness of a land that scented the world. You begin walking inland, guided by nothing more than the fragrance of possibility. In the markets of Madurai, sandalwood curls in the air like a slow-burning thought. The bark has been ground into powder, and from it rises a smell that feels like memory, cool, creamy, calm. The merchants sit cross-legged on mats, surrounded by brass vessels and woven baskets, each containing something rich and resonant. There is no shouting here, no urgency. Trade is not a battle. It is a gesture of trust. From the south, you travel up the coast, where monsoons guide the rhythm of life. The same wind that pushes fishing boats gently to shore carries ships to Southeast Asia and beyond. You see bundles of black pepper, each tiny seed once worth its weight in silver. Cardamom pods in pale green armor. Indigo packed in clay pots like dusk waiting to bloom on cloth. You pass looms where hands move without haste. Fingers draw golden. Threads through silk dyed in pomegranate and rust. Patterns repeat in waves. Flowers bloom on fabric. Peacocks spread across sorry borders. This is not just design, it is language. You arrive in Gujarat, where the port of Lothal once stood, now quiet under the soil. But long ago, ships left from here to carrying beads and cotton to Mesopotamia. The beads were made of stone and shell, drilled with holes thinner than a hair. No machines, just patience, just skill. This was trade before currency, before coins. It was barter and relationship. It was the whisper of one people's art across another's ocean. In the bazaars of Delhi, centuries later, Persian weavers introduce new motifs. Mughal emperors bring fine carpets from Central Asia and invite Indian artisans to mix and match, to blend what was theirs with what was not. The result is something entirely new, a fusion that isn't chaotic, but smooth, like two voices singing in different languages, but the same tune. You see carpets where deer leap across gardens of tulips and china leaves. You see marble inlay echoing patterns from Samarkand but carved in Agra. You watch as cotton, once just a local fabric, becomes global. Indian chintz-bright, lightweight, colour-fast is soon worn in the courts of Europe. English queens wear gowns sewn from thread spun in Bengal. In Calicut, the docks fill with Dutch ships seeking spice. In Surat, Armenian traders negotiate with Sindhi brokers. India becomes not a place, but a perfume lingering in the rooms of Lisbon, the palaces of Beijing, the markets of Istanbul. But the trade routes are not only highways of profit, they are corridors of thought. As goods move, so do poems, philosophies, and ways of being. Buddhist monks from India journey east, carrying not just texts, but gestures. A bowl, a silence, a breath. They return with new stories, new questions. On these same routes, Arabic astronomy meets Vedic mathematics. Music travels to ragas, morph, tabla rhythms echo along African coasts. Even the mango finds new soil. In Brazil, what began as a seed beside the Ganga now ripens under distant suns. And yet, despite all this movement, The soul of the Indian trader remains steady-rooted in dharma, in care, in the principle that what you give away comes back, not always in coin, but in connection. You meet a weaver who recites verses while he works, a merchant who begins his ledger with a prayer, a sailor who brings home not riches, but a new word from another tongue, and plants it in his child's lullaby. You walk now through the narrow lanes of Varanasi, where the scent of sandalwood thickens again, not in markets this time, but in shrines. A different kind of trade happens here, the offering of flowers for blessings, of coins for a thread around the wrist, of breath for presence. The same materials, cloth, incense, oil, circulate not only through commerce, but through ceremony. In India, the divine is not apart from the market. It flows through it, gently, as a current moves through a river, sometimes seen, sometimes just felt. You reach a house where women sit embroidering kantha quilts. Each stitch is small, each line imperfect, but together the patterns bloom spirals, fish, stars, stories from epics, scenes from dreams. These textiles aren't made for export, they're made for love, for warmth, for memory, a bride's trousseau, a mother's gift, a lullaby in thread. The sun begins to set, and the sound of bells rises over the hum of business. Stores close, lamps are lit, a gentle quiet spreads through the streets. The day's trade is done, but its echo lingers in the curl of turmeric in someone's teeth, in the sheen of silk folded into a bag, in the soft sigh of a coin pressed into a palm. You feel it in yourself, too, that you have not just watched history, but moved through it, step by scented step. Trade, in India, was never only about wealth. It was about weaving people to people, coast to mountain, east to west. And those threads, like sandalwood on skin, do not vanish when the market closes. They stay, they settle into the folds of time. They wait, and as you lie down now, your breath scented faintly with cardamom, your thoughts wrapped in muslin, you feel that ancient rhythm still moving, a slow tide, a steady loom. A trade that continues not in ships or coins but in dreams. You find yourself walking a quiet path. The road is not paved. It is packed earth, warm from the sun and worn smooth by generations of bare feet. The trees arch above, their leaves fluttering like slow applause in the afternoon breeze. There is no sign, no temple gate, no call to prayer, but something sacred moves here, not above you, beside you, on the ground. In the dust, a figure appears. In the distance, no crown, no staff, no army, just a simple robe and a song whispered under breath. The saint walks slowly, the way someone walks when each step is a choice. No shoes, no gold, only presence. You step aside, and the saint nods above you, not beyond you, but as if you were both threads in the same fabric. This is India's quiet lineage, not kings or conquerors, but mystics who walked barefoot through fields and alleys, not to rule, but to remember. They carried no scriptures, only songs. They did not build altars, they built metaphors. Their sermons were stories, their prayers were poems. They sang to the divine not as something distant, but as something breathing through the moment. And they asked you not to believe, but to feel. You hear the voice of Kabir now, rising like smoke from a loom. He sits among the weavers, tying threads, twisting cotton, speaking riddles that pierce through ritual and caste. The clay pot says to the potter, "Why did you spin me? I hold water and pain." His words are simple, but they tremble with fire. He mocks both priest and ritual, yet praises the sacred within the breath. Look within, he says. God is not in temples. He is in your breath, your blood. His voice is rough, but his presence is soft. Like someone who has stopped pretending. You walk with him through alleys where outcasts live, where cows rest in the shade, where children run barefoot over broken. Stone Kabir does not flinch. He blesses them with verse. His poems do not ask you to escape life. They ask you to see it clearly, to touch the divine through washing clothes, through grinding grain, through holding someone's gaze for a second, longer than needed. He dies without temple, without monument, but his songs still echo in the mouths of those who have nothing but breath and sky. Then the wind changes, and you find yourself on a different path. It winds through forest and river bend to where a woman sings. Her voice is trembling with longing, not for a man, not for a throne, but for Krishna the god who danced, who vanished, who left her aching. She is Mirabai. Her anklets are cracked, her sari is torn, but her spirit burns. She sings not to please, she sings to dissolve. I have no husband, no brother, no father, she sings. Only you, my dark one. Her voice carries across plains, past palaces, into the quiet ears of women who, like her, had no room in the world but infinite room in their hearts. You see her standing before a golden idol, not bowing, but swaying. Her song is her offering. She refuses to be silenced by kings, by custom, by caste. She walks away from wealth, from her marriage, from the life she was given, and in doing so, she becomes a mirror for those who ache, who burn, who long. Her poetry does not ask to be understood, it asks to be felt. And in the twilight, her footsteps still hum through Rajasthan's dust. Now the sky darkens, and you travel farther south, where the Bhakti saints roam. Tukaram sings to Vithoba with tears in his throat. Why do you make me love you, if you hide from me? He pleads, standing ankle-deep in river water, his reflection trembling. His words are not for scholars. They are for farmers, for widows, for the broken and tired. He does not speak of heaven. He speaks of the mud, of hunger, of love that outlives despair. His verses are sharp, but they soften the soul. These saints do not shout. They sing. Their melodies are worn into the air like the smell of ghee on a festival night. They carry no doctrines, only rhythms. Their truths cannot be argued, they can only be lived. You hear of Vakana from Basavana now. The rich build temples to Shiva. What can I build? I'll make my body the temple, and my soul the priest. There is no architecture here, only being. You pass a village where people gather at dusk. A singer takes a deep breath and begins. No microphone, number, script, just memory, just longing. The listeners don't interrupt. They sit, palms open, like flowers waiting for rain. These poems have been passed down not through books, but through breath. Grandmother to child, teacher to student, one voice becoming another. Until the saints are not gone, they are folded into the lungs of the people, and still they walk, barefoot, through time. They were persecuted, yes, exiled, mocked, dismissed, but they kept singing, not to convert, but to remind. You do not need a priest to find the sacred. You do not need a name. You need only stillness and the courage to feel. You sit down now in a field where fireflies rise like blinking stars. You close your eyes, and the songs arrive not with force, but with warmth. They speak to you not from outside, but from within. They ask nothing. They give everything. You hear, why seek the divine in heaven when he hides in your laughter? You smile, you exhale. You feel the saints walking past once more. You open your eyes. The path is empty, but your chest is full. These saints are not in history books. They are in the dust, in the flame, in the breath. And tonight they are in your sleep. You walk beneath a morning sky, the color of pearl. The air is cool and still, like the breath the world takes before remembering something beautiful. Ahead of you, in the hush of dawn, a shape emerges not from the horizon, but from memory. White stone, rising slow as thought, curves like sighs, spires like silence. You are in Agra now, standing before the Taj Mahal, and though you've seen it in photographs, paintings, on postcards or screens, it is only here, now, that you feel its weight, or perhaps its weightlessness. The Taj does not speak in commands. It does not boast. It simply is a marble lullaby that hums in your chest, not just as architecture, but as emotion solidified. This is not a monument to power. It is a tomb. A love letter written in stone. Shah Jahan, the emperor, built it for his beloved Mumtaz, who died in childbirth. He built it not to impress history, but to hold grief in a shape that would not crumble. And so he built this garden of domes, and shadows and light, a place where love could echo forever, even after names have faded. You enter its inner sanctum, and the world grows still. Every sound is softened, absorbed by marble. Even your breath feels sacred. You walk around the cenotaph, carved with delicate vines, with verses from the Quran, that whisper of paradise and patience. There are no bodies here, only memory, only stillness. And yet you feel their presence, not as ghosts, but as a love that has outlived flesh. This is just one story, one whisper, one marble echo. But India is full of them, empires, etched not in noise, but in stone. You leave Agra, and the world opens before you like a turning scroll. The Mughal Empire, under which the Taj was built, once stretched from Kabul to the Bay of Bengal. But its story is not told through battles alone. It is told through gardens, through calligraphy, through palaces where water mirrors sky. You visit Fatehpur Sikri, where red sandstone burns with the warmth of desert dusk. You walk its empty courtyards. You touch its carved lattice windows, as delicate as breath held too long. The Emperor Akbar lived here not to conquer, but to dream. He gathered thinkers of all faiths into one room and listened. He tried to invent a religion not of rules, but of understanding. The stone remembers. It always remembers. You walk farther, back into time, and find yourself before the ruins of Vijayanagar, the city of victory. Here, amidst the boulders of Hampi temples rise like frozen music. Elephants are carved into pillars. Gods ride stone chariots. The sky opens wide above you, and you hear not the sound of war, but of bells, markets, prayers, laughter. An empire. Once bloomed here rich in art, poetry, jewels, but it fell, like all things do. Yet the marble remains, stained by sun, shaped by time, softened by wind. The empire crumbled, but its beauty is still awake. You pass through Delhi, where layers of empire lie atop one another like sediment. The Qutb Minar rises, ribbed and firm, like a poem carved into the air. In its shadow, the iron pillar stands a silent riddle of metallurgy, resisting rust for 15 centuries. You touch its cool metal, and your fingers feel history that has outlasted even intention. In the south, you find the Chwalas, who carved bronze not for conquest but for dance. You visit Brihadiswar temple, where Shiva dances in stone. His hair flows in waves, one leg raised, one arm pointing inward, another outward, a gesture that means the universe destroys, creates, protects, and forgets. This is no cold sculpture, this is motion made still. You gaze up at the temple tower, which rises like a flame. You do not feel small, you feel infinite. Even farther, into the heart of Rajasthan, you discover fortresses like Jaisalmer. In sunset light, they do not loom, they glow. You walk through the narrow lanes of the living fort, past carved havelis, where sandstone becomes lace. The artistry is precise, but the mood is tender. These are not merely defenses, they are diaries, written in shadow and breeze. Marble here does not dominate, it sings. Stone does not just stand, it remembers, it mourns, it prays. You rest now in a quiet palace courtyard where no tourists linger, only pigeons coo. The breeze plays with a faded curtain, a fountain murmurs without rush, and in this silence, you begin to feel what the empires never said out loud, that they too were afraid of forgetting, and so they built, not for eternity, but for pause, for awe, for breath. You notice that even in their grandeur, the best of these structures were made not to last forever, but to whisper while they still stand. They do not shout their names, they do not brag. They murmur through carvings, through corners, through the way light bends on stone. They invite you to lean close, to look longer, to listen. You realize that marble is not cold. It is memory crystallized, not of war or rule, but of love, of longing, of the fragile desire to be remembered in beauty. And you feel it, now not as history, but as heartbeat. The stars begin to come out. Their reflections scatter in the garden pools of the Taj. A breeze carries the scent of jasmine and dust. The stones seem to breathe. You lie down on cool marble, your head against the floor, and feel the softness of centuries press against your skin, not heavy, not sharp, just present. The empires have fallen, their kings are dust, but their whispers remain in marble, in silence, in sleep, and tonight. Those whispers carry you gently into your dreams. You walk now through a forest that isn't marked on any map. There are no signposts, no trails, just quiet and the slow rhythm of leaves brushing against one another high above. The sun filters through in golden beams, soft and slanted, touching your face like a hand from long ago. And in this forest, you begin to feel something deeper than history, older than kings or empires, something that lives not in stone, but in you. This is not a place of monuments. This is the landscape of inheritance. You have always carried it inside your bones, beneath your breath, flowing silently with your blood. It is the library you didn't know you were reading. The archive etched in code, handed down not by scroll or statue, but by skin, by smile, by heartbeat. This is the history written in cells, the story of the people who made you. This is genetic memory, not in fantasy, but in science, not in myth, but in math. And you are its keeper. You sit beside a stream and close your eyes, and suddenly the centuries ripple. You are no longer just one person in one time. You are the result of thousands of lives layered quietly behind you, traders and potters, poets and midwives, shepherds, mystics, wanderers, warriors, women who labored in silence, men who sang to stars. Their decisions, their hunger, their chance meetings, their whispered prayers, all of it has folded into you. In the soil of India, genetics and history are not separate. The human migration stories written in your DNA match the footsteps pressed into this land. Modern research shows that the subcontinent has always been a place of movement, people coming in waves over millennia, blending, sharing, changing. No single origin, no one race, just currents, just patterns, like the monsoon. Like music, you feel this in your marrow. The deep time of India. Tens of thousands of years ago, early humans walked into this land from Africa, barefoot and wide-eyed. They followed the rivers, hunted by moonlight, sheltered under banyan branches. Their tools were sharp stones, their language still forming. But they left something behind in your genes' tiny signals, subtle traces. The way your body handles heat, the way your skin shields you from sun, the way your sleep responds to the turning of seasons. You move now to the plains of the Indus, where cities like Harappa once rose in grid-like calm. These were not empires of war, but of water and order-urban planning before scripture, drainage, before dynasty. And you carry this to not the bricks, but the blood, the ancient DNA, extracted from those buried bones, connects with strands inside you, quietly, without asking, later. Indo-Aryan languages swept in not, replacing what was, but layering over it like music modulating key. The old and the new folded into one another. Dravidian tongues continued in the south. Munda echoes remained in the east. And all of them stitched into the human body, into metabolism, into traits, into rhythm. India is not a melting pot. It is a mosaic, a genetic quilt. You pass through a field of millet, and it reminds you your ancestors farmed long before they read. They selected seeds, shaped soil, passed on not just their knowledge, but their resilience. You feel that resilience now, in the way your body heals, in the way you wake even after sorrow, in the way you keep breathing, even when you forget why. You are a continuation, not a beginning. Geneticists today trace migrations across India using fragments of mitochondrial DNA, passed from mother to child like a lullaby, and Y chromosomes, whispered down through fathers like old stories. These are not just statistics. They are footprints. Some show ancestry from Central Asia, some from Southeast Asia, some from coastal routes so ancient the sea has swallowed the trails. But all of it comes together in you, and in this knowledge. There is no pride, only awe. You sit now in a quiet courtyard, where an old woman weaves thread round her fingers and sings a tune without words. Her eyes have seen little of the world, but her body remembers it all. She carries the forest in her heartbeat, the steppe in her cheekbones, the river in her breath. She smiles at you, and something stirs, not recognition, but resonance. Vibration in your chest that says, I've never met you, but I know you. You realize that you, too, are someone's echo. Not just a result of history, but a living continuation of it. Your taste in music, the shape of your hands, the way you cry when the wind shifts. These are not random. They are inherited rituals. Quiet decisions made long before you, now flowering in you again. You are not alone in your body. You carry villages. You carry migrations. You carry oceans. And what you do next with your hands, with your words, with your kindness, becomes a note in someone else's song. As night falls over the quiet forest, you look up at the stars and wonder how many of your ancestors did the same, naming them, fearing them, thanking them. You feel them now, not above you, but behind you, in your spine, in your pulse. They are not lost. They are library shelves inside your cells. You carry their triumphs. You carry their tenderness. You carry their unfinished dreams. And as you lie down in the soft grass, the breeze cooling your cheeks, the stars blinking like distant memory, you feel your blood hum not in alarm, but in peace. You are not a stranger to this land. You are its story, still being told. The wind comes first, not in fury, but as a breath. It slides over the land like a memory returning, lifting dust in lazy spirals, curling through mango groves, and across rooftops, tapping gently at doors. You sit on a low veranda, your legs drawn up, and you listen. The trees hush. The cows turn their heads. The sky, once indifferent, begins to darken with the thick, slow promise of rain. It is monsoon, but not yet, not fully. This is the music. Before the music in India, the year turns not with a page, but with a sound. A shift, a rhythm that has pulsed for thousands of years through crops, songs, hearts. This chapter in history does not come with armies or emperors, arrives with clouds, with wind and waiting, with the endless return of something too large to control and too intimate to forget. The rain is not just weather here, it is memory, it is song. Before the rain falls, there is dust. You taste it in your teeth, feel it on your skin. It carries the scent of distant hills and ancient footsteps. Villagers sweep it from their courtyards each morning, only for it to return by noon. But no one minds. Dust is a familiar guest. It is the language of land unwatered, of stories walked into the earth by generations of bare feet. It settles on temple steps and cartwheels, on brass doorknobs and sleeping dogs, on faces turned up to the sky. And then, when the earth can wait, no longer it begins. First, a single drop, heavy, hesitant, then another, then many. Rain arrives in rhythms, like tabla beats on rooftops, like flute notes on banana leaves, like the slow beginning of a raga at dusk. You do not run, you listen. The sound is unlike any other soft, deep surrounding. It soaks into the parched land with a sigh, a relief so ancient it needs no words. The soil breathes again. The trees drink. The air swells with scent, wet earth, crushed marigold. The faint sweetness of cow dung baking in the sun and now breaking open beneath the waters return. This is not just a season, it is a performer, and India is its stage. You travel to where the monsoon first greets the coast with arms open wide. Fishermen race to pull in nets. Children scream and chase puddles. Markets grow quiet. Lamps flicker in low huts. And through the green, thick as dream, comes music. Not loud, not insistent, but persistent. Drums echo through rain. Rain answers back. In the temples, Kathakali dancers wait in green rooms, painting their faces by candlelight, listening to the storm rehearse its entrance. Here, the rhythm of the sky has always shaped the rhythm of the people. Festivals wait for monsoon. Farmers plant by its breath. Poets speak of longing not with lovers, but with clouds. In classical music, the monsoon is not a backdrop, is a mood, a raga, a call to the soul's quiet ache. You hear it in the slow rising notes of Megh Malhar, where the melody opens like clouds. The voice bends, trembles, rests. The tampura hums behind it like thunder waiting to fall. In ancient courts, singers were once believed to summon the rain. With these notes, the Mughal Emperor Akbar is said to have wept at Tansen's voice when he sang to the sky. Whether myth or memory, The story lingers because the connection is real, not between music and magic, but between music and monsoon, between rain and release. But when the monsoon comes, even here, the desert blooms. You see it in the sudden green, in the way camels lift their heads and blink into the rain. You hear it in the songs of the manganiers, the hereditary musicians who sing of love, longing, waiting. One of them plays the karmika, a bowed string instrument made of mango wood and goatskin. Its voice is ancient, worn, beautiful. He sings a song of a woman waiting for her lover through a long dry season. Her arms empty, her courtyard silent. The rain becomes the reunion. The wet of his feet on stone, the sound of anklets returned. You don't need to understand the words. You feel the ache. You feel the joy. The music holds you. Monsoon touches every form. The budgeon hums differently in the rain. The ghazal leans heavier on loss. Even the monsoon dances slow, weighted, limbs drawn toward the earth. You visit a village where girls sing Kairi songs under umbrellas made of leaves. The songs are simple, full of repetition, but in their loops, in their softness, they carry the pulse of centuries. These are not performances, they are inheritance, and still. The dust waits beneath the rain, for when monsoon leaves, it always leaves something behind. A changed scent, a memory of touch, and eventually the return of dryness. The cycle repeats, the land cracks, the leaves crisp, and once again dust resides as an ending, but as a new verse. The song begins again. You realize now that the history of India is not just written in stone or ink. It is written in rhythm, in water and absence, in rain and silence. The archives are not only libraries, they are puddles, roofs, the sound of drops falling on banana leaves. At 3 a.m. they are how a village times its weddings, how a field prepares its seed, how a grandmother closes her eyes and hums to the wind. You lie down now beneath an open window. The rain has slowed, the dust has settled. And in the space between thunder and sleep, you feel it, the music still playing. Not loudly, not to wake you, but just enough to follow you softly into dreams. You hold a leaf in your hand, not one fallen from a tree, but one shaped by human thought. It is smooth and narrow, pressed and dried, with soft brown veins and a careful string wound through its middle. The letters carved upon it are not familiar, yet they feel gentle, like waves lapping on some distant shore. You are holding a page from history not written in ink, but in incision, a palm leaf manuscript, a tea message from a world where people did not just write, they engraved time into silence. India has always been a land of many tongues, but more than that, it has been a land of many scripts, a place where sound took shape through curve and line, where languages were not only spoken, but sculpted. Each script was more than alphabet, it was identity, memory, design, and each was carved, letter by careful letter, into the body of the earth. Long before printing presses, before typewriters and digital fonts, words were sacred gestures. In caves and temples, on scrolls and stones, Indians wrote not just to record, but to reverberate. You walk now through the cool halls of Ajanta, where monks painted and prayed, but also wrote. Their scripts flow along cave walls like vines. Of thought, Brahmith, mother script, angular, firm like steps carved into mountain paths. It's among the earliest, from Ashoka's time, when edicts were carved into stone pillars to speak across kingdoms. Edicts, not of conquest, but of Kindness, you place your hand on one such pillar, and the stone feels both cold and full of fire. The letters etched here are 2,000 years old, and yet they haven't faded. You can't read them, not with your eyes, but your palm understands. These were messages to the future, and you are the future. From Brahmi, other scripts were born like branches from a quiet tree, Nagari, which would become Devanagari, curling like a dancer's fingers. Grantha, deep in the south, carved with generous loops. Tamil, one of the oldest still in use, curving like waves drawn in sand. Kannada and Telugu, rounded like pearls. Bengali, soft and wide-eyed. Malayalam, rippling like water, each region carved its voice in its own vein, not to separate, but to sing differently. You walk from state to state and feel the changes in the air. In Orissa temple walls are inscribed in odiaphorm yet lyrical. In Assam you see a harm, a script born in forested silence. In Kashmir, old charada characters bloom like snowflakes once fallen and forgotten. Some scripts have faded from daily use, like ancient lullabies, but they are not gone. They sleep in copper plates, in temple ceilings, in the hands of monks who still copied them by oil lamp. The act of writing was once an offering. Scribes prepared their hands as priests prepared for ritual washing, focusing, breathing, to write. The Vedas, they didn't simply dip pen to palm leaf. They chanted. They paused. They waited for the sound to rise before capturing it in syllable. The ink was not just ink. It was soot from lamps mixed with gum and spirit. The pen was not steel. It was red, and each line held breath. You visit a library that has no shelves, only bundles tied in cloth, each containing dozens of leaves. A woman unfolds one and begins to read aloud in a slow chant. You don't understand the language, but you understand the care. This is not consumption. This is communion. The script glows under her fingers. It is not just a record. It is a rhythm, even. King's honored script. In Thanjavur, you see the temple inscriptions of Raja Chola, etched not for glory but for management, for grain records, tax receipts, endowment to dancers and cooks. Everyday life written in stone. Time preserved in curve and line. Later, you pass a school in Gujarat where a child is learning to write the Gujarati, script her fingers slow but proud. She is not just learning to spell, she is tracing history through her own hand. You watch her pause after each letter, looking at the loops and angles like a young sculptor marveling at her first form, and you begin to see it. India's scripts were not just tools, they were expressions of how each people moved, how they spoke, how they listened. Just as dialects carry music, scripts carry posture. Some scripts dance across the page, others walk in solemn steps. Some glide like wind across a pond. Some etch themselves like rain into stone. And the deeper truth, most of these scripts were not made for books. They were made for memory. Carved into palm leaves, temple walls, cave ceilings, copper plates. They were made to last not forever, but long enough for love and law and poetry to pass from one voice to the next. You lie now beneath a banyan tree, whose roots have gripped stones where scripts once sang. You can almost hear them, the whisper of letters, the slow rhythm of syllables winding through centuries. Not lost, just resting. In a world rushing toward the digital, you feel a strange stillness, that once every letter was a prayer. Every script was not just a sign, but a shape of the soul. And as you close your eyes tonight, your breath slows to the rhythm of a scribe's hand. Somewhere across time, a letter is still being carved. And somewhere inside you, That letter waits to be read. You walk through a courtyard where time has no hurry. The sun is soft on old stone, and the breeze stirs gently through the peepal leaves, sounding almost like pages being turned. But there are no books here. No ink, no paper. Only stillness. Only memory. On the ground lies a low table, and atop it, a palm leaf manuscript rests fragile, fibrous, tied together with thread. The script carved upon it glows faintly in the light, each character as delicate as breath, as intentional as prayer. This is not just writing. This is survival. This is thought made visible and passed on like fire. India is a land where not one language bloomed, but hundreds. And with each tongue came a way to write, to shape sound into symbol, to give form to the fleeting air of speech. Scripts here did not descend from a single alphabetic tree. They branched, curved, looped, bent into new rhythms over centuries. Like the country itself, layered, diverse, evolving but always rooted. Each region carved its soul into its letters. You do not just read them. You feel them, as if they're written not on the page, but inside your own breath. Your steps take you deeper into the past. The air thickens with incense and sandalwood. In a darkened temple corridor, you run your fingers over a wall where language has become architecture. The stone is cool, but the carvings pulse. Ashoka's edicts lie here, etched over 2 millennia ago in Brahmi, one of the earliest known scripts of the Indian subcontinent. The letters look like stairs or waves, each stroke carved by hand, each line born from silence. There was no mass printing then, no casual sentence. To write was to etch the air with steel and stone. Ashoka's message was not one of power, but of compassion, how to live with dharma, how to treat animals, how to guide with restraint. And so these words, carved in dozens of languages across the empire, were written not only for kings, but for shepherds, potters, monks, mothers. They stretch from Afghanistan to Tamil Nadu, from Nepal to Orissa, embedded in rock as calmly as breath in the chest. You touch one letter and feel it vibrate through centuries. From Brahmi, a lineage unfolds like a tree unfurling its branches. At dawn, scripts bloom across regions Devanagari in the north, its clean vertical strokes like rivers falling from the sky. Grantha in the south, generous and round like temple domes. Tamil, old and graceful, its letters curled like wind-drawn sand. And so many more: Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Bengali, Gujarati, Punjabis, Gamoki, each with its own rhythm, its own temperature, its own quiet dance. These scripts were not merely alphabets, they were identities. To write in one script was not just communication, it was presence, dignity. You walk now into a cool archival room, where bundles are wrapped in saffron cloth. You watch a man in silence untie one, revealing a text in Sharada script, once spoken in Kashmir and now nearly vanished. The letters are sharp, crystalline, precise. Their meaning may have faded, but their presence has not. These scripts, even the forgotten ones, remain as footprints in dust shaped by human intention, held by stone, remembered by wind, further south. In the Chola kingdom, the temples themselves became books. You visit Thanjavur, where inscriptions in Tamil script run along the granite base of the Brihadaswara temple like threads around a dancer's ankle. These are not prayers, they are records. Who gave land? How much rice was stored? How many lamps lit the sanctuary? Life was not separate from the sacred. The grain led to the dance led to the divine. Scripts here are not static. They change like rivers. The Gujarati script, used today for trade and poetry, once wrote royal decrees. Bengali script, with its soft curves, cradled the early songs of Rabindranath Tagore. Gurmukhi, created by Guru Angad, gave Punjabi its own Bodhia. Script designed to be clear, to be kind, to reach even the illiterate. Each script carries intention. You can feel it in the curves. And then there are the scripts, still being reborn Modi, once used for Marathi administration. Mahajani, used by merchants. Takrai and Kathi, asleep but stirring, preserved in temple ceilings and family Bibles. They may not be on keyboards, but they live in memory, in ritual, in the edges of old ledgers that someone's grandmother still keeps tied in cloth. You walk now through a modern street in Jaipur. Neon signs flash in Devanagari and Roman script. Alike Urdu curls on shopboards in strokes like water. A boy types Hindi on his phone using Latin letters. Scripts still shift. They are not fading. They are adapting, not resisting time, but riding with it. The way wind reshapes clouds without losing the sky, and still you feel a quiet reverence, because these letters, no matter their shape, are not just tools. They are mirrors. Each one holds the curve of a wrist, the rhythm of a voice, the dignity of a people saying, I am here. I spoke, I sang. I remembered. You returned to the palm leaf manuscript from the start. The light is dimmer now. Evening has folded the world in soft blue. You run your finger along a carved syllable, and in it you hear a voice, not loud, not foreign, but familiar, as if it had always been there, waiting for you to pause. It says, the script is not lost. You are part of its unfolding, and as you lie back beneath the stars, the sky above you forms its own script constellations, inked in light, slowly moving across the parchment of night. You close your eyes. The letters still glow behind your eyelids. The land still writes. And in your sleep, the story continues. You enter the night like a slow breath. The sky has turned a thick velvet, stitched with quiet stars, and the air carries the perfume of roasting spices and old earth. You walk barefoot now, the ground still warm beneath your soles, and ahead of you, the lights begin to gather lanterns, swaying on ropes, their yellow glow soft as memory. This is not a place you will find on a map. It is not built of bricks, nor made by decree. It is older than empires, deeper than borders. It rises each evening in the corners of cities, in the lull between day and sleep. You have arrived at the night market, not a place of commerce alone, but a theatre of the mind, a ritual, a rhythm, a dream. In India, night markets are not simply shops. They are gatherings of food and fragrance, of laughter and language, of rhythm and repose. But beneath their bright stalls and fragrant steam lies something older, something soft and eternal. A history not written in books, but performed each night in gestures, in tastes, in trades passed from mother to daughter, from grandfather to grandson, through the hushed centuries. You walk through these lanes, and though they are crowded, you feel oddly alone, as if the market is speaking only to you. A boy sells jasmine garlands from a mat, his fingers tying knots faster than thought. The flowers are white as moonlight, their scent ancient, carried from temple to threshold, from lover's hair to God's shrines. Beside him, a woman stirs a pot of halwa, its golden sheen catching firelight. She doesn't look up, but you sense she's known this recipe for longer than she's been alive. Further down, a call rings out in Urdu soft, rhythmic, like poetry set to breath, and you realize you're hearing not a bargain, but a performance. Selling, here, is theatre, and the market is a stage. The idea of bazaar, the word itself, Persian, shaped by centuries of trade, has always meant more than buying and selling. It is a weave, a space where cultures intersect, like threads in a tapestry. Silk from China, indigo from Bengal, pepper from Kerala, gems from Golconda, chants from Varanasi, embroidery from Kutch. India's history was never isolated. It was always trading, and in the folds of the night, you feel this exchange continue, not of goods, but of memories. You pass a spice stall, and the air thickens, cardamom, cumin, turmeric, fenugreek, cinnamon, curled like sleeping dragons. You breathe it in, and for a moment, you taste the empires that once crossed these lanes. Arab sailors, Portuguese traders, British ships, Dutch coins, Mughal caravans. The market has changed faces, but never heart. It remains a pulse beneath the world's formal history books, a place where women buy lentils and gossip about dreams, where children sneak sweets, where men sit for hours without need for a clock. The night market is a kind of memory palace, and each stall is a room. In one, a tailor bends over his work, his needle dancing through cloth the color of earth and flame. He hums as he works, not to pass time, but to honor it. His father did the same. His grandfather too. His script is stitch. His language, thread. He cannot read, but he knows 1,000 patterns by heart. You watch him pause, measure by eye alone, and smile. He is not rushing. The night stretches wide before him. Another stall sells old books, faded spines, broken bindings, pages marked by thumb and time. You run your fingers over a copy of the Tirukural, its Tamil verses still clear, still stern and sweet. The seller nods and tells you his uncle taught him the stanzas by heart while peeling oranges. You buy the book not for reading, but for holding. The past, here, is passed hand to hand, like fruit, like fabric, like fire. You pause near a vendor roasting corn over coals, and the crackle of the husks sounds like distant thunder. He offers you one without asking your name. You accept. The heat warms your palms. You take a bite, and the salt and smoke feel like childhood weather. It was yours or someone else's, you can't quite say, but it tastes familiar, like something remembered in dream. And so you walk through lights and shadows, past whispers and song, through a dance of transaction that is not about money, but about present. In every city of India, Delhi, Jaipur, Hyderabad, Madurai, Impulvi's night markets rise as if by instinct. After the heat fades and the shutters close, the soul of the place emerges, draped in fabric and flickering lamps. And always there is food. Always there is sound. Somewhere nearby, a flutist plays under a banyan tree, the notes winding around lanterns like vines. The music is slow, reflective. It does not ask for applause. It only asks to be heard. You stop and listen. The night market quiets around you, and the sound of the flute becomes a thread pulling you back through time, through generations, through stories told and retold beneath awnings and stars. You think now of ancient cities, Ujjain, Pataliputra, Madurai. They, too, had markets that came alive after dusk, when scholars discussed stars, when lovers met by the well, when shopkeepers counted coins by oil lamps. The rhythm of buying and selling was only ever the surface. Beneath it flowed something deeper, connection. a space where no one is truly alone. And that rhythm continues still. Even now, you hear it, the clatter of bangles, the rustle of cloth, the low echo of bargaining turned to banter. These are not just transactions, they are rituals repeated nightly, not out of necessity, but because the heart remembers, because the soul, too, needs routine. You rest now on a stone bench near the edge of the market. The crowd has thinned, the lights dim, but a few stalls still glow. A girl spins sugar into thin threads. A man carves names into grains of rice. An old woman sells tiny bottles of perfume rose, sandalwood, rain. You choose one called Ruchameli, the soul of jasmine. She smiles, and for a moment you feel as though you've bought not scent, but time. As sleep draws close, you look up at the sky above the awnings. The stars have not shifted. The moon hangs low and quiet. The world spins slowly, cradled in a rhythm older than speech. And the night market, this tapestry of gesture and color, begins to fold back into itself, stall by stall, like petals closing on a flower. You carry the scent with you as you walk home. You carry the music, the light, the soft shapes of words, exchanged and moments shared. You carry the night like a warm shawl across your shoulders. And when you finally lie down to rest, the market stays with you not as noise, but as memory, not as story, but as song. You stand at the edge of the river just before dawn. The sky has not yet decided on a color. The air is still, as if the world is holding its breath. And there, flowing before you, the water moves, not quickly, not lazily, but with a kind of purpose that requires no explanation. It glides as if it has always known where it's going. You kneel down, cup some of it in your hands, and it slips through your fingers like silk that remembers its weaver. This is not just water. This is a witness. You are standing before the Ganges, or, as it is called in whispers and prayers, Ganga. Ma, the mother river, the keeper of stories, the one who remembers. The rivers of India are more than geography. They are characters in its story, spirits in its bloodstream. They do not simply flow, they teach, they mourn, they heal, they carry. Some rivers are small and seasonal, like melodies that come only in one raga. Others, like the Ganga, are symphonies vast, winding, full of harmonies, and shaped by time itself. The Ganga begins, not in myth, but in mountain, a glacier in the high Himalayas, where the wind speaks only in silence, and the snow never fully melts. From there, she descends with the patience of centuries, carving valleys, feeding fields, cradling cities. She has seen it all. Empires rising on her banks and falling into her currents. Sages meditating beside her like stones that breathe. Children splashing in her shallows. Ash scattered like final poems into her tide. And still she flows, never pausing, never forgetting. You step now onto a stone ghat in Varanasi, the ancient city that watches the Ganges as if she were a lamp held in God's palm. The steps are wet with the morning's first offerings. Flowers float on the surface, marigolds and rose petals arranged in tiny bowls made of leaves, each one carrying a prayer, a memory, a request. The river takes them all, not with judgment, but with grace. There is no gatekeeper here. Sorrow, joy, forgiveness are carried equally in her current dot for thousands of years. People have come to the Ganga, not to escape time, but to meet it, to wash in it, to weep into it, to let it carry away the weight of living. The Vedas speak of her. The epics trace her course. The sculptures at temples depict her descent as a celestial aventer fall from heaven, slowed by shivers tangled locks, so the earth would not shatter. Whether you believe the myth or not, you feel the truth of it. She is not a river, she is a rhythm. You walk along her banks, and with each bend of the water, another layer of India unfolds. There are cities that drink from her, Allahabad, Patna, Kolkata. There are crops that rely on her, wheat, rice, lentils, all nourished by silt carried from the heights. And there are stories etched into her very shaped conquests fought across. Her fords, pilgrimages made to her source, poetry composed to her sound. In the Mahabharata, warriors bathe in her. In the Ramayana, exile leads down her course. In every corner of India, rivers echo her name. In the south, they chant the Kavari. In the west, they sing to Narmada. But it is Ganga who remains the mother of all, the one whose presence is not just physical but emotional. Every diaspora, every letter from abroad, every longing for home carries within it the pull of her water. To return, to touch, to remember, you stop near a group of women washing clothes on smooth stones. Their rhythm is ancient lift, slap, rinse, ring. They speak softly, their voices braided like threads. Between them flows a language of care, passed through mothers and grandmothers. And behind them, the river listens. The river always listens. Further, downstream, a cremation fire smoulders low. The smoke rises without rush, curling into the morning air. A man chants in Sanskrit, his voice steady. Another weeps silently. The ashes fall into the water not as waste, but as offering. Here, death is not an end, but a confluencer, folding back into something older than body, older than breath. The river receives it all. She does not refuse. She does not turn away. You wonder now how much she remembers. If each drop holds a fragment of a song once sung, if each wave carries a phrase from a lover's goodbye, if she remembers the feet of the Buddha who is said to have bathed in her, the sandals of Kabir, the whispers of Tulsi Das, the footsteps of British officers who built railroads too close to her grace, the ashes of Gandhi, released into her as if into thought, modernity has tried to change her dam's pollution, concrete banks, but still she flows, sometimes slower, sometimes with pain, but she continues, because rivers, like memory, resist being erased. They find new paths. They break stone with time. They whisper their shape back into maps that tried to forget. You leave Varanasi and travel to the Ganges source in the Himalayas. The air there is thin, the silence thicker than sound. You see the glacier Gangotri white, ancient, melting slowly in the morning sun. It looks fragile. It is fragile. And yet from this fragility pours a river that has held the subcontinent. Together like a spine, you kneel and touch the ice-melt water. It is cold, but not harsh. It is pure, but not proud. And it says something to you not in words, but in warmth. It says, I carry what you leave behind. I carry what you cannot hold. I carry you. You return now to the lowlands, and the river flows beside you like a companion. At dusk, you sit beneath a nime tree and listen to the arti, the ritual of flame offered to the water. Bells ring, lamps float. People sing, but it is not loud, it is gentle. The crowd breathes together, and you realize that this river, this quiet, shimmering mirrors, not just geography, it is grief and grace, history and hope, washing the past gently toward the sea as night falls and the stars return. You lie back on a wooden boat that rocks softly on the water. The oar rests, the wind stills, and the river continues, not loudly, but without pause. You drift, your breath matching her rhythm, and somewhere in her depths, 1,000 years of memory drift with you holding you, not with arms, but with knowing you close your eyes. The river carries you, she always has. Dust rises softly from the earth as your footsteps touch the old road. It does not billow, it dances light, slow, drifting like memory stirred awake. The sun is low, casting long shadows over broken bricks and sleeping roots. You are not walking through ruins. You are walking through echoes places, where the past has not died, only settled. Here, in the quiet between fields and footpaths, you begin to feel something beneath the surface. Not a ruin, not a relic, but a rhythm that never left. Because in this land, even dust remembers. India does not end. It does not reach a conclusion, nor offer final pages. Instead, it folds and unfolds, breathes in and out, scattering seeds of itself across generations. Its history is not linear, but layered, like sediment in a riverbed, like the spices in a meal, like the thoughts in a dream. You sit on a worn stone, perhaps once a foundation of something grand, and you close your eyes. The wind shifts, and you begin to hear them, the voices of 1,000 yesterdays, not shouting, not proclaiming, just whispering from the moment Indus cities shaped bricks into straight streets, to the Vedic chants lifted in forest clearings, from the rise of empires to the reign of poets, from invasions that shattered to syntheses that healed. India has never stood still. You feel the pulse of it beneath your palm as it rests on the earth. Not just what happened, but what endured. This is a land where time is not forgotten. It becomes breath, gesture, song. In the grain of today's wood, you still see the curve of ancient craftsmanship. In the festivals that fill modern streets, you hear echoes of rituals older than memory, even in the face of change in the neon of cities, the buzz of trains, the murmur of technology. India carries something old, something still, something watching. Its soul is not in opposition to tomorrow. It walks beside it. The past and the future, hand in hand, wrapped in a shawl of dust. You walk now through a village lit by small lamps, where a girl practices Bharatanatyam beneath a tree, her feet brushing dust into spirals. Her teacher claps rhythm beside her, eyes soft with memory. Not long ago, such dances were temple offerings. Now they are taught in classrooms, performed on stages, but their purpose remains, to embody time, to shape silence into meaning. You watch her gestures, sharp, fluid, poised, and realize this is not recreation. This is continuation, not far away in a bustling city. A young boy programs an app that teaches Sanskrit grammar through games. He grins as he tests it, and you understand tomorrow is not forgetting the past. It is inviting it forward, just as scripts once curved onto palm leaves, now they flow into screens. Just as debates once rang through monasteries, they now ripple through forums. The language of tradition has changed clothes, but it still walks. India's history is not a sealed story. It is a living poem, finished, unwritten in its ending. You think of the people whose names are not in textbooks, the farmer who planted a lineage of wheat, the woman who remembered every birth in her village, the potter who shaped the same curve for 50 years. Their work was not recorded, but it continues. It shaped the food on today's plate, the dialects in today's breath, the patterns in today's clay. the invisible architects of the present. You look down at your own hands and wonder what dust will you leave, what stories live in your movements that you have not yet told. The history of this land teaches you not only to look back, but to recognize that you, too, are now part of the becoming. You are tomorrow's sediment, tomorrow's trace. Even the great empires knew this. Ashoka carved edicts not to command, but to guide. Akbar invited thinkers of all faiths into conversation, not for conquest, but for curiosity. Gandhi walked, barefoot not to lead, but to witness. India's great moments were not only battles, they were shifts in how people listened, how they shaped ideas, how they remembered each other. You sit now in a quiet corner of the evening, where incense curls into twilight and a sitar plays somewhere nearby. The air is soft, thick with summer and stillness. A temple bell rings in the distance not as alarm, but as a reminder that time is not lost, that the future is built not from invention alone, but from attention. This attention, this listening is India's secret, its long, slow gaze at the human condition, its patience with contradiction, its belief that nothing is final, and everything returns. So you lie back now beneath the sky that has watched over this land for tens of thousands of years. The stars here are not spectators. They are ancestors, watching without judgment, glowing without end. In your breath is the breath of those who once planted rice, once chanted before dawn, once carried fire to altar and hearth. And in the dust beside you is the dust that once rose from Nalanda's courtyards, from Harappan streets, from Dandi's salt-strewn sands. The dust that fell from the brush of cave painters, from the hooves of travelling saints, from the robes of those who loved this land enough to stay, and those who wandered to carry it. Elsewhere it all settles now around Unat, heavy but warm. Like a blanket made of memory, you close your eyes. Tomorrow is not far, and the past has not left. You sleep in the arms of a land that never stopped dreaming. Now, let your body grow still, let your breath soften, as if the land itself is breathing. Through you, you have wandered across a continent tonight, not in miles, but in memory, through the hush of ancient rivers and the dance of forgotten scripts, through palaces made of silence and markets lit by lanterns, through dust that once rose beneath kings' feet, and still settles softly in a grandmother's courtyard. You have walked not through a museum, but through a story that never ends. You have felt the thread of time not as something lost, but as something always circling back gently, like anklets around a dancer's step. India does not live in the past, it dreams in it, and tonight you have dreamed with it moving slow through the pulse of temples, the music of kitchens, the scripts carved by firelight and folded into jasmine. The land has held you gently, not to teach, not to impress, but simply to let you listen. Now let go, let all the images drift away, like petals down the Ganga, the girl dancing under the Nime tree, the calligrapher copying stars into scripture, the soft clang of bells in the night market, the monk whispering Sanskrit before dawn. Let them fade slowly, like twilight giving way to dusk, and know, as you fall into sleep, that you have not left history behind. You carry it now in your breath, in your dreaming, in the rhythm of your resting heart. Good night,